By golly, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel. Welcome to episode number 302 of the Jeet Kune Dialogues. Ask Me Anything with yours truly. I'm doing all of this by memory because, as you can see from the backdrop, I'm in a hotel room in Denver. We're here for the Inasano seminar this weekend, and so I forgot my entire I Love Jeet Kune and Jeet Kune Dialogues hard drive back home in Miami. So I have no notes. I have no images that I had kind of planned to share with you guys. So I got nothing. But since this is the Ask Me Anything version, let's go ahead and give people, I even had a hard time connecting to the YouTube. So as you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button. Feel free to continue doing so throughout the dialogue. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the Jeet Kune Dialogues. How is that for doing an intro strictly from memory, huh? Anyhow, so I noticed that in my absence, on the way over here between last night and getting here to Denver, that you guys went to town once again, right, on something Richard Torres related. So I posted something the other day, and a JKD colleague of mine said that, well, he essentially said, Dwight, it's your own fault, right, if your interactions with JKD people beg the question of artificial intelligence, right? And I said to him, well, you might have missed my calls for people to stop all the Jeet Kune bickering, right? And he said, what is I forget now what Joseph said, but it was interesting, and I am taking it into consideration, because to be honest with you, I am, as we would say in the island, sick and tired. Like we're getting nowhere. We're getting nowhere with all the personalizing of this thing. I know it's really difficult for a lot of you guys to respond to somebody and have it not be personal. It's hard for me too, don't get me wrong, right? Because once again, although there are people out there who think that I think I'm superior, right? It's hard for me too, but I try as much as I can to stick to fact. So it's like, if I don't understand something, I'm going to ask you why you're saying what you're saying. Now, of course, somebody else reads that and they go, oh, well, he's being antagonistic, or he's being disrespectful or whatever. But that ain't it at all. That ain't it, right? It's like, if I don't understand what you're saying, I'm going to ask you to clarify it. If I don't agree with what you're saying because my facts are different, that I'm going to bring that out. But when I'm going to try my hardest not to start personalizing it down to the level of, well, you're obviously some kind of idiot because this and because that. Let people do what they want to do. Let people talk what they want to talk. I think it was Angelo Ferrer posted something the other day, not on I Love Jeet Kune or on our sister page, Jeet Kune Talk. It was just, I think it was just on his feed. And he said something like, somebody just put up something about martial arts with which I disagree. And you know what I did? I kept scrolling past it because they didn't ask me for my opinion, and it's none of my business. All of you have that option. You can see something posted by somebody, whether it's somebody who's on here all the time or not, and you can disagree with it, and you don't have to say anything. And you certainly don't have to get into a big rigmarole back and forth with whoever it is. Right now, having said all that, okay, I realized that, so my friend Greg Rhodes, he and I had a conversation because Greg sent me a picture, and I was like, I don't recognize this at all. And he says, well, it's from the JKD, my own process book. And I admitted to him that I bought the book. I skimmed through it. I saw one picture that I had never seen before, and that was pretty much it for me. I closed the book. I haven't gone back to it. But the upshot of it, and so between talking with Greg yesterday and getting to Denver today, apparently Greg went ahead and put stuff up about it. So it's the thing about the Ted Wong certificate. And so let's talk about a couple of things, right? Actually, it was kind of eerie that Greg and I had this conversation separately, and then Richard had put up the thing about Ted Wong's Jeet Kune certificate and what have you. All right, so I'm going to tell all y'all something about certification to teach and what have you. And I am sure you've heard this before, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Taki Kimura, James Lee, and Dan Inosanto were given permission to lead groups. If you want to call that instructorship, go ahead and call it instructorship. Bruce Lee wasn't really making anybody instructors, but he had started a group in Seattle, and then he moved from Seattle, so he left Taki Kimura in charge of that group. You can call that instructorship if you want. Same thing happened in Oakland, and then it happened again in LA. Now, the only thing is that, but I don't have access to it here because I forgot all my hard drives. There is the image of the LA Chinatown Junfan Gung Fu Institute, and it does say down at the bottom, Dan Inosanto, head instructor, and it is in Bruce Lee's penmanship. So that's the only one I've ever seen that says instructor on it, and it's for Inosanto and Chinatown. So you could say that whatever certificate Bruce Lee gave Dan Inosanto was instructorship. You could say that. My point is, none of that has been verified or what have you. There's nothing. This thing about third rank and who got the third rank certificate and who was second rank and fifth rank and whatever. None of those said instructor on them. They were just the ranks that were assigned. Now, in the late 1980s, because everybody who had been put in charge of a group had been promoted to at least third rank, that became the first level of instructorship. But this is all 15 years after Bruce Lee had passed away. So I know that some of you guys get real caught up in who authorized who to teach and whatever. The instructorship thing, that did not start until what I'd refer to affectionately as the seminar era. Okay? Well, no, that's not true. It started before that, but it caught on during the seminar era, right? And so that was where the whole, because if you look at the class schedules from the Inosanto Academy or from the Kali Academy or from the IMB and what have you, you'll see that there was like phase classes, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then, as you know, at the Kali Academy, there was the separate JKD class. But the instructorship thing started to take form because now there were people from outside of Los Angeles. Okay. There are people like me, little skinny kid that flew up from Barbados. What the heck is he doing here? Right. So that thing grew. And my understanding is that it was set up kind of like the professorship thing, right? Where you have the associate professor, you have the full professor, all that stuff, the tenured stuff, and whatever. So it was kind of like that. So there was apprentice instructor, associate instructor, full instructor, and then there's a senior full. At some point, my understanding is that there was a thing, senior associate was added, and then of course, somebody's going to go, oh well, that was put in there to delay people and get more money from them and whatever. Again, none of that nonsense is necessary. Things happen, okay? Ron, my good friend and training partner and travel facilitator, Ron Reagan Goldstein, we had for probably the second or third time, we had a big discussion in the car again about people's mindsets, right? And what the mindset was of a particular era. That applies so meaningfully to Jeet Kune Do, the mindset of people from the different eras. I will tell you this. Now, I wasn't there. I was not there at the Kali Academy. I wasn't there in the backyard, right? I'm too young for all that stuff, no matter how old I look with not having shaved and what have you. But I have it on good authority that at the Kali Academy, for example, nobody was impressed with much of anything other than whether or not it worked. So it's like a guy comes by, oh, and he's well known in this particular art or whatever, and they're looking at him and the stuff that he's showing, and it's like, wouldn't work. So the Jeet Kune Do of that era was the anti-establishment Jeet Kune Do. It was the, look, all that matters is, can you fight with it? Can it make me a better fighter? Obviously everything evolves and we've kind of gone past that, what have you. But anyhow, but my greater point is this, and then I'm going to take a look at the comments and see what it is that you guys are asking me to talk about. My greater point is this. In the past 40 years, 50 years or whatever, this thing has grown and grown and grown, but it has not grown in the direction in which it has become so popular that people are beating a path to Jeet Kune Do schools in order to sign up and participate and partake of this, the process and product of the greatest martial artist, the most famous martial artist of the modern era. And that is, I can't tell you exactly what it is that went wrong. I can't tell you exactly what the solution is, but I will tell you that that's sad, that everybody knows who Bruce Lee is, but then they don't know anything about his art. And then there's so many of us on here every week who are so dedicated and devoted to it. And it's almost like we're constantly trying to, what's the metaphor? Push spaghetti uphill or what have you. So again, I will say that taking online pot shots at each other that are all personality driven, that's not helping. But if you're going to take a pot shot at somebody and it's because you're nailing down a fact, right? If somebody said, look, so here's the fact, right? For some reason, let me get back to the image. For some reason, this Ted Wong certificate from the Junfan Gung Fu Institute is unlike all of the other Junfan Gung Fu Institute certificates which have Dan Inosanto's signature in the bottom left-hand corner. Now, why? Why would they have that? Because we know that Dan Inosanto was considered, and I say this, was considered by Bruce Lee to be the instructor, because there's the curriculum handout or whatever it is, right, that says Dan Inosanto, head instructor, Los Angeles Chinatown branch. So based on that, if Bruce Lee wrote instructor, then I'll say, okay, Dan Inosanto was made instructor of LA Chinatown. And so if he's the instructor, then his name is going to appear on the certificates. But for some reason, there's this version of the Ted Wong certificate where it's missing. I don't know why. I'm not going to start a huge conspiracy about it. It's been put out there. Greg put it up, and you guys can take a look at it for yourselves. We could start a whole conspiracy on it, but is that going to push the art forward? We could start a conspiracy over why all the certificates kind of have the same date. I think so. This is December of '67 or something. I think if you look at Inosanto's 3 certificates, I think they all have the same date as well. Now, to my way of thinking, because like I told you about Jeet Kune being this anti-establishment, anti-classical thing, I wouldn't be surprised if the truth of it is that one day Bruce Lee was like, okay, you know what? I got to get some kind of paperwork down for these guys. Okay, all right. So Ted is second rank. All right, here's the date. Here's his Jun Fan certificate. Here's his Jeet Kune certificate. Okay, Dan, here's the date. All right, here's your Dawa Chinese Kung Fu certificate. Here's your Jeet Kune certificate. Here's your Jun Fan certificate. Bang, 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 bang. Because it wasn't a hill. Having pieces of paper was not a hill upon which anybody was planning to die. Nobody was planning to raise a flag on that. We are doing that now, 50 years later, making a big fuss, making a big to-do over pieces of paper and what have you. We've got people threatening other people. We've got people cussing out other people on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever. Why? Because Bruce Lee got famous, more famous after he passed away. That's why. Okay? And as his fame grew, people who were associated with him, they started to become famous as well. And some people were better known than other people. And then at one point, the ones who were not as well known, they came to the forefront and they started to become well known also. And then the magazines observed that phenomenon and decided to capitalize on it. And because the magazine editors and publishers know that controversy sells, they were like, let's put out an article and call it, "Is Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Disappearing?" And that started the ball rolling. And now, 30 years later, people are cussing each other, people are threatening each other, and it's all bullshit. So stop it. Deal with facts. Attack people on their facts. Do not attack people on their personalities. All right? Enough already. Okay, that's me getting down off my soapbox. And you should see, talk about soapbox. I came in, I wrecked my hotel room. I moved tables around. I hooked up stuff to the big screen TV or whatever. I might take a picture of it so you guys can see behind the scenes what I had to do to get ready for this. Right? Okay. All right. So let me take a look at so I got the big screen TV up in front of me. So if you see me looking up there, it's just because the images are a lot clearer there. All right, so let me see if anybody asked about anything. No, Ricard, you did not beat anybody, right? Okay, scrolling. McTully, I can't help myself. Okay, all right, so boom, boom. Okay, so Scorch says, every time I research a weight training exercise and its applicability for JKD, I read, this exercise is great for JKD. Is there any exercise that is not great for JKD? Yes, Scorch. The exercises that are not great for Jeet Kune are the exercises that build the chest so that then your arms can't even get around your chest and cover your center line. That's the only one I would say. But I say that because I'm somebody who has a pigeon chest, right? So I was never able to build chest. So then I just said, oh, but Bruce Lee didn't work it. Because I think Scorch, if you look at the images of Bruce Lee's workouts and what have you, I don't think there's anything on there for chest. I think it's like forearm and abs and I don't have it here with me, but I don't recall, because I remember I went in search of it one time. But anyhow, if you look at it, you'll see Bruce Lee was a triceps guy. Bruce Lee was a forearm guy because we need that for punching. Back exercise as well. Abs, not a whole lot for legs and squatting and what have you, and not a whole lot for chest. So that's my opinion. But Scorch, I have not spent as much time in the gym as you have. You and I have friends in common who were or are gym rats, and your good friend, the good friend of your good friend, who was my very good friend, she is the one who introduced me to the gym. And I spent 5 years, I think, with her in the gym, which is why I'm old and fat now and no longer muscular, but I'm also no longer skinny, right? So you know more about it, what have you. But that's just my thing. If you build the chest up, I see too much chest muscle getting in the way of punching a la Wing Chun. But what the heck do I know? Right? Okay. Steve Juman says, thanks for the historical insight. Yeah, I wish I was a better historian, Steve, but thank you. Daniel Rivera says, during the Oakland period, Bruce wrote Leo Fong a letter about wanting him to join the instructor program or instructor training. It may have been worded differently. I have a copy of it. I have to check the exact wording again. Possibly, right? Because you know, if all these things are going through Bruce Lee's mind, right? You know, because during the 2 years that his official residence was Oakland, right? So that's a 24-month period. But I think my understanding from Richard Torres is that he spent like a total of 10 months, right? So there might have been a whole lot of stuff going on in Bruce Lee's brain. He's like, okay, well, you know, maybe I should have instructors appointed here and there. And then also, Daniel, if there was this time where he was thinking about the Cato Kung Fu chain of schools, then yeah, you're going to have to develop some kind of instructorship program, right? So it's very possible, but I think the fact is that it never got developed into anything. He never got to a point where it was like, okay, this particular rank is instructor and whatever. That all was developed later on, right? Ricard says, love this stuff. Who wouldn't, right? Mick Tully says, how many Iraqis have been harmed in the making of this podcast? Well, Mick, 0, because I never served, right? My thanks go out to all those who were brave. Well, I was too old by the time I moved to the States. So 0 Iraqis were harmed in the making of this podcast, Mick Tully, and behave yourself. He cannot help himself. He really cannot help himself, right? Simon Alpin says JKD is supposed to be a fighting art. Shouldn't matter what rank he is or they are. Can you do it? We don't get this in wrestling, boxing, or Muay Thai. That's true, because wrestling and boxing and Muay Thai, Simon, were never the property of Bruce Lee. And that's why we're all getting into this. However, here's what's important though, Simon, because it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? Jeet Kune is supposed to be a fighting art. Yes, you're quite right. It is a fighting art. However, it's a martial art system. So would you sign up for somebody who says, I'm an instructor in such and such martial arts system, and I did it all by myself. Nobody trained me. I studied from films, I studied from books, and I appointed myself instructor. Now, Bruce Lee kind of did that. But the thing is, Bruce Lee went on to become famous and attract a lot of attention to himself, even though he was self-promoted. So could somebody else do that? Yeah. But Bruce Lee self-promoted and created, for lack of a different expression, Jeet Kune. So that is his established system. So for somebody else to come along and go, well, I'm creating my own Jeet Kune, no, you're kind of biting off other people's stuff, right? So just like I don't think I would sign up to train with somebody who says, well, I'm a self-promoted black belt in Kyokushin karate. I don't think so. I want to know that your lineage is established. So I don't think, even though, yes, it doesn't matter what rank these guys from the 70s were or what have you. Are they competent in passing on the knowledge? Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But when we take it a little bit further, because those guys have a certain prestige, let's call it, a certain pedigree assigned to them by virtue of the fact that they trained with Bruce Lee. The rest of us did not. And we are coming up in Jeet Kune in a different era, in a more commercially established era. There are those of us who have made our livings teaching Jeet Kune. So in that regard, it needs a little bit more monitoring. I think it needs a little bit more legitimizing. And so that's where certification becomes somewhat important, right? But on a related note, Simon, in boxing, we don't have the argument about original boxing versus boxing concepts, right? Original Muay Thai versus Muay Thai concepts, original wrestling versus wrestling concepts, or whatever. In wrestling, boxing, and Muay Thai, people readily accept the fact that the art has evolved over time and things have changed, and some things have come along and improved it. And so in some regards, it looks a lot different from the way it used to look. Technology. I would say that in Jeet Kune, that should be more readily accepted also, right? James Bishop and I had a conversation, and there was something that he said that gave me an idea for a topic for the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast, and it is somewhat related to that I just mentioned about people readily accepting that technology changes everything. All right. Okay, cool, Simon, thanks. Ricard says, as many bad jokes as you can come up with. Oh my God. Right. Okay. Del Mountain, which said, given all of the bickering within Jeet Kune, I now fully appreciate why Horian Gracie trademarked Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and his curriculum. The trademark has paid off for Horian and his sons. Yes, because Jeet Kune people could have learned a lot when it came to the business of Jeet Kune from people like Hori and Gracie. See, so you see how Del Mountain, how Simon was just talking about Jeet Kune as a fighting art. See, so when it's like, we don't care about all that business stuff, right? You know, it's a fighting art, and this and this and this. All that's fine. All that's fine if you have a paycheck, a salary from somewhere outside of your Jeet Kune. But when Jeet Kune is your livelihood or becomes your livelihood, then it becomes a different thing. You see? And so Gracie trademarking it and building a legacy, right? The Bruce Lee legacy has been built on bickering. Isn't that a sad outcome, right? Yeah, there is a Bruce Lee legacy. What is it? Oh, there's a separation between original and concepts and whatever. It is such nonsense. It is such nonsense, right? That's what your legacy is. Okay. So yeah, when it comes to the business of Jeet Kune, okay, now when you hear me say these words, please understand, I am not putting these guys down. These guys are all my seniors. I have learned a lot from them and what have you. But when I first heard about the nucleus being formed, the first thought I have is this will not last. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that because they were going into business. They were trying to turn Jeet Kune into a business, but they were trying to organize it in a certain way. And whether you want to think of that as business or not, if you're trying to organize it, if you're going to try to promote it, if you're going to try to market it, right, and put it out there, you better know something about business, how to run stuff. Okay. And that was just my reflexive instinct. This is not going to last, right? Now, am I right? Well, I mean, I was right that it didn't last, but I don't know if it didn't last because of the reasons that I just expressed, right? But yes, trademark your stuff. Right? Okay. Paulie D'Annunzio. The problem arises when Richard Torres cuts down Sifu Dan's authority and qualifications to teach and elevates Ted Wong. All right. So, okay. So, Paul, that is your personal opinion. You see? So, there are others who agree with you. I would be a hypocrite if I said, oh, I have never thought in terms of Dan Inosanto being cut down. But even if that's my opinion, if you take a look at most, I would say 98% of my interactions, when it comes to Dan Inosanto changed things, right? It's like, okay, prove it. Prove that Dan Inosanto created the 4 ranges in order to change Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune and sell it as something else. Prove that. You see? So when you say that Richard Torres cuts down Dan's authority, Sifu Dan's authority, have you proven that? When you say he tries to elevate Ted Wong, have you proven that? Has that been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt? Can that be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt? Because if you say to Richard, you're always cutting down Dan Inosanto, he is going to say, I'm just trying to make sure that Jeet Kune history is not rewritten. So where are we? We're at a stalemate. So now, since factually nobody can prove anything, some people resort to what? Cussing each other, right? Or making fun of each other in some shape or form. This is the thing. You can just scroll past it. You don't have to get into a thing for a second time, a third time, a fourth time, or whatever, right? I have been Dan Inosanto's student for 40 years. I know that he did not create the four ranges in order to change anything and create a new Jeet Kune Do separate from Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. I know that for a fact because I have been his student for 40 years. I have been very close to people who have been with him for 50 years. We have conversations about things. I was there in part of that era where these things just happened. So, for example, the famous Jeet Kune Do blend. He was down in Australia. Savat was kind of on his mind at the time because Salem Asli had come to town, and so it was like, okay, so we're showing people stuff when we're on seminar with Salem. We're down in Australia. We're putting stuff on video for Walt Missingham. All right, let me give them a whole host of things. So here's the entry technique with a kick from boxe française, right? Okay, here's a jab from boxing. Here's a trap from Wing Chun, right? And here is a lock from Jiu-Jitsu. This is the Jeet Kune Do blend. And that made it onto video, and some people picked up on it. Ah, look, Inosanto. There's a thing called the Inosanto Jeet Kune Do blend. When it was a thing that was said, just like the ranges. It's like, well, there's a certain range at which kicking, is probably the thing that works best. There's a range at which punching, there's a range at which trapping works really well. There's a range at which grappling might be the go-to element, right? So there's kicking, punching, trapping, and grappling ranges. And that's how it happens. It's just perhaps even an off-the-cuff remark. But it builds and it builds and it builds, because now it's like, oh, that's cool how it's the same way, right? It's the same way that when Bruce Lee was talking about attack by combination, and people were like, ABC, right? And I said, oh, that's cool. ABD, right? So, oh yeah, so everybody was cool, right? So then it's like, oh man. So like if Ron and Anthony are here, the food we had at Yaya's Bistro a few hours ago, man, that food was freaking JKD. That's how it was. JKD, even that, because this was the 60s and the 70s, and everybody was cool. 40, 50 years later, we're having arguments over it. So I disagree when what's being said is that Dan Inosanto added stuff. That's a very popular one, that he added stuff. And hundreds of comments about, no, nothing was added. Look at the advertisement for the seminar. It says Dan Inosanto, Kali Eskrima. It does not say Jeet Kune Do. It does not say Kali as Jeet Kune Do. Look at, I don't know if you guys know that Andy Wilson a few months ago, and Andy Wilson went through probably all the back issues of Black Belt magazine, and just found where probably like in one instance, there was a thing about an Inosanto seminar and it said Jeet Kune Do concepts, right? Whereas everything else was like, we'll be teaching Filipino martial arts, we'll be teaching Silat, whatever. Yeah, but here's the thing. Everybody knows Dan Inosanto is Bruce Lee's premier disciple. So the name Inosanto is, Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do. So when Inosanto goes and teaches Kali and Eskrima, some people, right, are like, well, what is this? This is not what Jeet Kune Do is. I'm out of here. Some people are like, Kali Eskrima, God damn, that's some good stuff. I think I'll stick around. That's people like me, right? But nobody ever thought, oh, so I guess Kali and Eskrima, that's the new Jeet Kune Do. No, Nobody ever thought that. So you put that up, and hundreds of people comment and tell you, no, there's no evidence of it. But you cannot change some people's minds. So state your facts, right? Tell the truth to the best of your knowledge of it, and leave it alone. Okay? Do your best, and I say do your best because I can be guilty of it as well. Do your best to not assign motive to what people are doing. Counter their assertions with your own knowledge of fact and ask them to prove their assertion. Enough said. All right, Paulie? All right. Mick Tully says, politics has robbed us all. Oh, my good friend Bob Landers, look who showed up. Bob, we were talking about you. When? When was it? It was all good, of course, Bob, right? But Bob Landers says in JKD, everybody is an instructor, right? That should probably have had an emoji on it so that everybody knows that you're joking, Bob, right? Magazine Retriever over on the YouTube. To what extent do you think that the popularity of MMA has detracted from the global interest in JKD? No, I don't think so at all. I think that it's not one or the other, right? It's not like there was global interest in JKD, and then in '93 after UFC won. Well, wait, let me think about this again. Because to what extent do you think the popularity of MMA has? I think the popularity of MMA detracted from global interest in all martial art forms. Okay? I think Gracie Jiu-Jitsu came in and stole a ton of people from everywhere. I mean, including JKD schools, right? I lost a few people in '93, between '93 and '95. I remember there was a guy. He went to the BJJ place, and within 2 months had cracked his sternum. And I don't know if he even ever went back to martial arts, right? But that was the what do you call it? That was the rock and roll days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, right? So I think that the popularity of MMA detracted from global interest in all the other martial art methods that were out there. So of course, Jeet Kune would have been impacted by it as well. But I don't think it's that detraction is unique to Jeet Kune, not at all. All right. Simon says, it's not as popular as it should be because people are trying to box it into a certain time and era. It should be trained like it was when Bruce was alive, tool development, condition drills, and SHIT loads of sparring. The evolution comes with pressure testing. I don't know if the reason why Jeet Kune is not as popular as it should be is because people are trying to box it in. They're trying to box it in. Simon, I'm not sure. I think Jeet Kune is not as popular as it could be because it's never been expertly marketed on a widespread basis. There are people, Jeet Kune instructors, who have marketed their individual schools to an extremely high level of expertise, but that's their individual schools. The art as itself, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or whatever, that marketing vehicle was the UFC. So that benefited everybody. So so the Kung Fu TV series benefited all martial artists. People started putting Kung Fu on their karate signs and what have you. The Karate Kid benefited all martial artists. But I don't think there was any single factor that benefited all Jeet Kune. Might have been different, Simon, if Bruce Lee had lived, but he didn't. And so instead, what happened? In LA, JKD contracted and went into Inosanto's backyard. Up in Seattle, when Bruce Lee moved, it too contracted. They went downstairs into Taki Kimuro's basement or something like that. In Oakland, it had already contracted, I think, before Bruce Lee passed away, because it went from the school on Broadway or whatever it was to James Lee's garage, if I have my facts right. So JKD was already experiencing a contraction of such. So seminars may have brought more attention to Jeet Kune, but not necessarily the art as a whole. Again, seminars would have brought attention. Well, maybe, because if a guy in Colorado read about a seminar in Florida, and looked to see if there was somewhere in Colorado that he could train, I guess you could say then that it was benefiting the whole thing. But no, because that's still local, right? So that's still kind of specific and not general. So I don't know, Simon. We'll have to talk about that again. But it certainly does not help that people are trying to box it in and limit it to a particular era. Okay. All right. Cool. Nice one. Thanks, Simon. Bob Landers, what did I miss? Where is the version of the certificate not signed by Dan? I put it up there, Bob Landers. The Junfan Kung Fu Institute membership certificate has no Inosanto signature on it. Okay. Simon says, I like saying that. Creating set forms, etc. This only takes the aliveness out of the art. Yeah, yeah. Alex Hausman, because Bruce still had some laying around. Oh, some certificates. Sorry, as you guys know, my get into the comments is way later, all right, than when you put it in. Yes, because Bruce Lee had certificates laying around. Yes, and Dan used those. Yes, right. Yeah, because nobody cared. Okay, Ricard says, speaking of the differences with lineages and what have you, since you started your podcast, what have you learned as to be the similarities of the organization of the schools? Like, for instance, in Asano Academy Phase 1, another one calls it JKD Beginner Class, and so on. What are the pros and cons on each one? And how would you recommend? Okay, all right, so wait. What are the pros and cons, and how would you recommend? I can't show all of this. A new instructor is about to open up a school and wants to organize the school curriculum and give a title to each group starting from beginner or phase 1. Well, it's man, you could have beginner, and you could have beginner level 1, level 2, level 3, level however many you want, and then you go to intermediate. and then you can have level this, level that, and then you go to advanced, and you have level this, level this, level this, and then you go to very advanced, and you have level this, level this, level this, level this. You could have phase one, or you could have basics, or this became de rigueur a few years ago, well, decades maybe, fundamentals, right? Instead of basics, fundamentals. So you could have fundamentals or basics, and then you could have phase one, put levels in there. Phase two, put levels in there. Phase three, put levels in there. Phase four, whatever, right? It's entirely up to the individual because there is no set pattern for that. Keith Kirkpatrick put up a couple of days ago. I don't know if it was here or if it was over on the sister page. It was a thing about trapping, and I asked him when is it that he would introduce people to trapping, and if I remember correctly, he said it's between. I think he said it's about 6 months or so, right? And which is something that I recommend also. See, so here's the thing. So I'll tell you a little history about this. One of the things that differentiated JKD from everything else that was out there in the 80s was the trap in hands stuff. Okay, nobody else was doing it. Nobody else had seen it or what have you. In fact, I have even been told that Wing Chun people, their trapping was not like what you see today because the trapping comes from the JKD people. Wing Chun, there's some Wing Chun people that now trap the way that Jeet Kune people were trapping. This is what I've heard, right? So trapping differentiated, and now I have lost my train of thought. Oh, so the way I organize my stuff, people had to have top level skill kicking and punching before they could go into trapping. They had to know how to hit. But because trapping was so popular, people would start at some schools, people would start their students off with trapping. Not a good idea to my way of organizing things, right? So for me, it was you got to develop your technique with static balance. Then you got to develop, and I'm talking about striking techniques, right? So you're kicking and you're punching. And then you got to develop that striking technique with dynamic balance. And then when you can hit proficiently, now we talk about crashing and bridging, right? And having that bridge contact with another person. And our terminology for that was for trapping and grappling, you need to be able to skillfully manipulate your opponent's center of gravity. And so you must have impeccable control over your own center of gravity first before you can do that. So I would not be in a rush to introduce people to whatever. But for a new instructor organizing stuff and what have you, people like new stuff and people like being shown, let's call it for lack of a different expression, the fancy stuff. So have a class where the fancy stuff, everybody gets to train in it. And when they go, oh, wait, I can't do this. I go, well, yeah, the reason why you can't do it is because it's not your material. Now, you know how it becomes your material? Show up, train hard, don't quit. That's how it becomes your material. All right. Okay. All right, Ricard. I hope that helped. Okay. Is that it for now? Maybe. Frank. Frank says, Seafood White, I believe that a lot of the infighting in the JKD community is motivated by money. What do you think? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because there's how many of them who are infighting are making money, right, Frank? I mean, think about it, right? Um, how would you? I mean, unless it's like, well, somebody's like, you don't want to, don't train in that guy's seminar, come to my seminar instead. If they're doing something like that, but is that even working, right? Has anybody been extremely successful in fighting with somebody else in the JKD world to the point where that person who created the fight made a substantial amount of more money, right? I don't know. I don't know. Because I'm not trying to diminish your point, because there is a financial motivational factor in the JKD world. Don't get me wrong. There are people who set out to make a name for themselves because they were interested in being financially rewarded for it. So I'm not saying that everybody in the JKD world is a true angel and not motivated by base desires like financial success. No, not at all. But I don't know that when the magazines published articles like, is Bruce Lee's, well, wait, the magazines probably made more money. That's probably, Frank, that's probably the people who made money off the Jeet Kune in fighting, because when they started all this stuff about original Jeet Kune and Jeet Kune concepts and what have you, they probably sold more copies. I forget where I read it, where I heard it, or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it was established by the people in the martial art magazine industry. Put Bruce Lee on the cover, you sell more copies. So have an article about a dispute in Jeet Kune, you sell more copies. If somebody in the Jeet Kune world picked up on this controversy and these disputes and was like, yeah, if I join this club or this camp and I talk about this and I talk about that, maybe more people will come to me and I'll make more money or what have you. I don't know how successful that might have been. I really don't. Because like Anthony and I were talking about when we were at lunch, there's enough out there for everybody. So you don't have to put down someone else in order to build yourself up, right? My teacher, Dan Inasano, right now, I don't know which page it's on. Well, actually, it's on the I Love Jeet Kune page. Pete Hetrick put up a thing about who has done the most for Jeet Kune. And forgive me, I don't remember who it was, but somebody put out a list of names, all students of Dan Inasano, people who have gone on to make names for themselves in the Jeet Kune world, people who have gone on to promote the art and philosophy of Bruce Lee, right? And again, I have lost my train of thought. Why are we talking about this, right? So I would say that if there's one person whose motivation was never 100% about money, it's Dan Inasano. Now, I'm not saying that Dan Inasano is like, I'll just starve but I'll go around the world and teach seminars and no, you don't have to pay me, because that would be ridiculous, right? So of course there's a financial compensation element to it. We live in the real world. But I would strongly say that his motivation has never been how much money can I make, which is why you never hear him saying that guy in Jeet Kune, that guy, that other guy, they all train under me. Why is anybody going to them? They should all become. Never, never. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about that, Frank. Great question. Thank you. G. Anthony Joseph. Finally, I heard the passion. Love it. Oh, geez, be quiet. That's my good friend. He's allowed to tease me like that. Right. John Paul Daly, International Fist Organization, Jeet Kune, shows some great training methods for JKD. He does. He does. Bob Lander says there's chess development for Dan in the Jeet Kune book he wrote early on. Yes, there is. Bruce limited his sets to 2 and reps to 8 and 12 to prevent him from building too much unnecessary muscle. Yes, yes, right. Leo has the receipts, I guess, for the boxing thing or the instructorship thing, Brooks, right? Okay, David Hatch, how you doing? Okay, does an instructor, oh wait, what's this? Oh, okay. Does an instructor teach? I thought Cedro Bruce would say, I can't teach you, or is an instructor a guide only? No. See, okay, so both, David, both, right? Of course, an instructor instructs. Of course, a teacher teaches, but they also guide. When Bruce Lee talks about, what was it he said? I don't believe in styles, so without style, what is there that I can teach you or whatever? That's Bruce Lee being esoteric Bruce Lee. Okay? That's like, well, it's easier for me to tell you what Jeet Kune is not than what it is. So Jeet Kune is not karate. Jeet Kune is not Aikido. Jeet Kune is not Jiu-Jitsu. Jeet Kune is not Muay Thai. Jeet Kune is not Boxe Française Savate. So I have just told you 5 things that Jeet Kune is not. Now, have you learned anything? Have I improved your understanding of what Jeet Kune is? Not at all. But didn't I sound cool? I'll say it again. It's easier for me to tell you what Jeet Kune is not. Wow. Look how cool that is. Yeah, that only works in some circles. Does not work everywhere. So, yes, an instructor teaches. An instructor instructs. A teacher teaches. Okay? A group leader leads the group. But that doesn't mean that there are not also guides. You see? Because in my teaching, I guide my students to find what works for them. I got to teach. I can't just, okay, boys and girls, as your Jeet Kune guide, today I shall be guiding you to see what works for you. Okay, are you ready? Okay, guide. Nope, ain't gonna work. I better bloody well teach. You're trying to trick me, David Hatch. You're trying to trick me. Thank you, my friend. Food for thought, for sure. When I get this one all the time. When will you get Dan and Hassan on your podcast? I have no idea. Okay? None. I have no idea. Daniel Rivera says the letter Two, Leo Fong was on University of Washington letterhead, so that may estimate the date. I don't have the lead in front of me at the moment. Right. Okay. All right. So, you know, if it's that far back that it's on University of Washington letterhead, then it would have been in the early stages. So who knows what Bruce Lee might have been thinking at that time about instructorship and what have you. But wait, if it's a letter to Leo Fong, who is part of the Oakland group, why is it on University of Washington letterhead? This might have been like the certificates that Alex just talked about. Maybe he had University of Washington letterhead lying around, so he just used that as letter paper. I don't know. Bob Lander says JKD is not a good choice for a career or livelihood. You might be right. You might be right, Bob. Too late for me. Mark Black says you can't necessarily sell a fighting art or system to everyone. Not everyone wants to fight or pressure test. You can lose students. Yeah, but here's the thing, right? You split your students into the ones who want to fight and pressure test and the ones who don't. That way you keep more students and you make more money and you prove Bob Landers to be wrong, that Jeet Kune is not a good choice for a career or a livelihood. You give people what it is that they want. You don't go, if you're training Jeet Kune with me, it's a fighting art. You better be ready to fight or whatever. Look, I'll tell you something. My jaw almost proverbially figuratively hit the floor the day that Ajahn Chai, my Muay Thai instructor, said, it's not about training everybody to be a fighter. I was like, what? Because he finally came around to that. Because those of you on here who know Ajahn Chai, you know that he trained everybody like if they were fighters. That was it, because he only knew one way. But then, let's see, this was 95, 91. Wait, no, I started with him in 85. He said this to us in 2019. So that was 34 years later, right? 34 years later, he says, no, it's about training your students. It doesn't have to be about training fighters. So different people will come to you, different motivations for different reasons. Have a well enough rounded program that you can give everybody what they're looking for, rather than forcing everybody to go down a particular path. That's the way I would do it. And yours was a statement, Mark, not a question. So forgive me if I answered something you didn't ask. Right? What's this, Mick? Generic martial arts will easily pay the bills. So find a way that, look, because here's the thing, right? It's Jeet Kune Do you're teaching, so it's going to be good stuff. So if you can find a way to teach good stuff in a way that people will enjoy and stick around, and your school grows, then do that. This idea that in order to make money in martial art, you have to water it down, that's not true. That's not true at all. What you have to do is you have to find a way. You have to create a culture in your school, right, where people will show up, they will train hard, and they will not quit, because every time they leave class, they feel like they rewarded themselves. They feel like they benefited greatly from being in your presence. You don't have to water it down. There are some people, not all, but there are some people who, when they jump on that bandwagon, oh, well, in order to make money, you have to water it down. It's because they are actually afraid. They are afraid to use the brain power that it takes to formulate a freaking curriculum that bleeds retention. To formulate a curriculum that is so scientifically developed that people are like, give me more, give me more, give me more. It's easier to cop out and go, oh, well, no, you have to water it down. Because what they're trying to say, right, is like, I am so full of integrity that I will not water down my Jeet Kune, so I will just have one student. They're actually afraid to try to have 10. And they're woefully afraid of trying to have 100. Okay? I had 250 students at our maximum when we were it wasn't money hand over fist, but we were doing okay. 250 active. I never hit that magic 300, and I will tell you why. The reason why I never hit that 300 was because I never karateized my school. We used belts for ages 4, 5, and 6 because the Little Dragons uniform from Century Martial Arts came with belts. They were only 4, 5, and 6 years old. Their brains weren't ready yet for the esoteric nature of Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune. But when those little suckers hit 7, you are now junior Jeet Kune. And now you get to wear the same uniform that the big folks wear. And they loved it. Okay? I did not have a black belt club. I did not put the adults in belts or whatever. So I never hit the 300 magic mark. It is what it is, right? If other people want to do that, if it works for them, it works for them. Wasn't my thing, right? So is what it is. Okay. Scorch says something similar happened to JKD. Sadly, when Ed Parker died, people in the American Kempo community became argumentative and hostile to one another. Yes, because like Bruce Lee, Ed Parker was a charismatic martial arts leader and a famous personality, and it's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. When that person who was, let's say, the glue of an organization, when that person passes away, all kinds of dissension and division start to occur. Yeah, right? Jeremiah Gill, what's up, my friend? Give your students something to work for and progress and constantly evolve if you want to keep them around. That's it. Well said. Right? Magazine says, oh, okay, this is back to the thing. Bruce Lee had an ectomorph body type, which allowed him to become very shredded with only 2 sets of 8 to 12, right? A lot of bulkier people try and vain to look like Bruce. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Wonder what kind of body type I have. Steve Mosley, hello. Jeremiah Gill again. When RT makes incorrect statements about the history of Sifu Dan, we also need to correct the errors. True, but I'm going to rephrase what you said, Jeremiah. We're not going to correct the errors because Richard has his mind made up about things. I have my mind made up about things, and nobody is going to come along after I've been with Dan Inosanto for 40 years, unless somebody could come up with incontrovertible evidence to make me think differently about Dan Inosanto, the things that I believe about him. You're not going to convince me of anything. So likewise, none of us are going to convince anyone, forget Richard Torres, anyone, who has an opinion about the history of Jeet Kune, about Dan Inosanto or whatever, if they have solid beliefs about a thing, that's it. Ask them to prove their assertions. Because if they don't think that they are in error, excuse me, there's no way that we can say that we are correcting the errors. I made a joke with Richard because he says that oh shoot, Dwight, if you're going to tell about a joke, you should remember it. But it was something about rewriting history and erasing history, whatever. It was funny at the time. Okay. Retriever says that Jesse Glover once said he was impressed by how seamlessly Bruce Lee could go from range to range. Well, yeah. I mean, it was Bruce Lee. Right. To be honest, it would be nice to have a little fat come wintertime. You mean you, Alex, or me? Because I live in Florida. So wintertime, we don't really have to worry. Except, man, flying into Denver, oh my God. So the first time I came to Denver was 18 years ago, 2006. We were here for, you ready for this? We were here for a martial art business marketing event. Yep, 2006. It was when I met my business mentor, Dan Kennedy. So if you ever go to my page, I have 2 photo albums, My Life on Planet Dan, right? Because there's Planet Dan Kennedy and Planet Dan Inosanto. And one of the glorious things about the 10 years that I spent as a Dan Kennedy student, Dan Kennedy was the biggest Bruce Lee fan, And now, as a business and marketing genius, he was also somebody who had read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's Keys to Success, right? The 14 principles, whatever, of human achievement. He had read all that stuff. So when I showed him the image of Bruce Lee's definite chief aim, he knew exactly where that came from. So then when I saw the documentary and the camera panned to Bruce Lee's bookshelves, and you saw Think and Grow Rich there, and what was the other Napoleon Hill book? There were two copies of it wasn't Grow Rich with Peace of Mind, but it was 2 other two copies of another Napoleon Hill. I was like, yes, look at that. And the person who turned me on to that is actually my old student, Carlos Redlick, who is the creator of the I Love Jeet Kune page, right? So it was full circle, It was very cool when all that happened, right? Bob Lander says, check your messenger. Bob, I only have 2 arms and 1 pair of eyes. I can't check messenger because while I'm busy checking messenger, what am I doing here? Yeah, okay, yeah. So Bob sent me the picture of the Ted Wong certificate with the Inosanto signature, right? Okay, yeah. So we've seen that, and then the Jeet Kune certificate with only Bruce Lee's signature. Okay, all right, yeah. So we've all seen that, Bob. Thank you. All right. Okay. Mick says, I can't help calling out revisionist poo-poo when I see it. I'm not as good a man as some of you. Mick, right? Kali is cool. Yes, it is, Mick Tully, very much so. Bob Lander says I'm well behaved, and Pete says that I beat Mick Tully. Okay. Okay, Simon says it's seen as that trapping stuff. All the drills, forms, and series, etc. The aliveness is not recognized. Yeah, I know, Simon. You and I have discussed that before, right? A lot of this organizing of sets and the creation of forms, and well, the creation of form stuff, I don't know about that, right? But the creation of sets and writing stuff out and teaching it in, here's series one, and this is sequence number one, sequence number two. Like I guarantee you, tomorrow, right? If Sifudan teaches something in the Junfan section, and it's the Junfan kickboxing stuff and what have you, he's not going to call me up to demonstrate it because I do not know those things in the order in which he has put it out there for years. There are people with better brains than mine, and they can remember that, cross hook cross is followed by cross, body hook cross is followed by cross, uppercut cross is followed by cross, body hook, high hook cross, or whatever. I can't remember any of that stuff. So if you call me up, I will freelance it. Sorry, right? Anyhow, okay. So that stuff is, Simon, an attempt to organize stuff in order to present it on seminar to dozens, if not scores, if not hundreds of people. Okay? Because it's one thing if you got 6 guys in your backyard, if you got 12 guys in your JKD class, but if you got 100 people on a seminar floor, hard to personalize that, right? So, yeah. All right, Alex says, to hell with popularity, train it like it's supposed to be. Well, why can't you do both? Why can't you train it? Alex, are you saying that if you train it like it's supposed to be, it can never be popular? I don't understand. Why can't it be both? KB Retro 78 says, how important do you think philosophy as a study is in developing in JKD? Well, I mean, there's different branches of philosophy, right? So to me, I don't know that I would go off and study whatever branch of philosophy there. Like, I don't think that I personally would not go off now to embark on a study of Zen philosophy at this stage of the game. To me, it's my philosophical endeavors I'll shortcut it, and I'll look to Bruce Lee's philosophical rants is not the right word, but his philosophical his notes and what have you, and like I'll study those, and I will absorb and adapt those for my own use. But I don't know that I'm going to go study philosophy separate from JKD now. I'm going to read The Art and Philosophy of Bruce Lee. I'm going to read Striking Thoughts. I'm going to read The Artist of Life, right? I'm going to read everything that Bruce Lee made notes on, right? So I'll read those back pages of the Tao of Jeet Kune, because then marrying that to my own way of thinking is enough of a philosophical Jeet Kune endeavor for me. But I don't know that I'm going to go study Zen or something else by itself. I hope that makes sense. But it is important to have a philosophical understanding of Jeet Kune, because with that understanding, that's a more sophisticated understanding of Jeet Kune, as opposed to it's a fighting art. And all it is is a fighting art. And just get it right. But here's the thing, see, you can't fight with philosophy. You cannot defend yourself with philosophy, right? Although verbal jujitsu, right? So you might be able to talk your way as a self-defense thing, right? And you also cannot eat philosophy. So you better have something, right? You better have something else that puts food on the table rather than just spouting a lot of philosophical aphorisms and what have you, right? Okay, where are we? Kali Kid, the movie is needed. Yeah, I'll write it. No, I will not write it. I'll do the fight choreography, Mark Black. Okay, you get the producers and what have you. I'll handle the fight choreography. Right? Paulie D'Annunzio says the general public has no idea what Jeet Kune is. Half of them can't even say it. Everyone, including the soccer moms, know what BJJ is. Yes, the soccer moms knew what Taekwondo was because the soccer moms, literally, an episode of 2.5 Men. So that tells you how long ago it was. And Charlie's brother Alan was trying to make a date with a soccer mom. She had the van and everything. And she said, I can't, whatever, right? Like on Wednesdays, because the kids have Taekwondo. Mainstream comedy TV series and Taekwondo made it in there. I was jamming on board today to a Damian Marley song, and part of the lyrics says karate and ballet, right? Because it's I forget what song it is, but the lyrics talk about karateing and balleting teenage things, right? So BJJ out of the UFC pay-per-view becomes a marketing phenomenon. So yeah, right? There was a time when the word karate meant all martial arts. Then for a period of time, kung fu meant all martial arts. Then for a period of time, because of his phenomenal success with Above the Law, Aikido worked its way into the general populace's mind. And then Taekwondo did it. And then along came MMA and BJJ. So, yeah, nothing like that happened. Something similar happened in the 80s and 90s. That was the decades of the Jeet Kune phenomenon, but that was seminar generated, I would say, right? In the 1980s, the events page of both Black Belt and Inside Kung Fu, the events page changed from tournaments to seminars. And you can verify that. You don't have to take my word for it. So seminars became a thing, and Jeet Kune Do was spread primarily and predominantly through seminars. That's how it made it, right? I say that Inside Kung Fu made its money off the Inasano clan and JKD and Filipino martial arts. I would say that, right? Okay, all right. The new book has that same certificate, but it does have the Dan signature. Yes, Bob. Catch up, Bob. We talked about that before, right? Frank says, I thought that Only the Strong was going to create major boom in capoeira. I looked in vain for capoeira schools. Sadly, UFC 1 premiered a few months after Only the Strong premiered. Yes, and it's possible that a capoeira boom was stifled in the US. True and not true, Frank. 1993, Only the Strong. There was an influx of Brazilians into South Florida. So capoeira boomed here, not here in Denver, Dwight, boomed back back east in Florida. And then in certain communities in New York also, and capoeira is still, and in Los Angeles, because technical advisor, capoeira technical advisor, Amen Santos from Only the Strong, with whom Joel Clark, Sifu Dan's assistant, who I will see tomorrow, Joel still trains with Amen, right? And Frank, can I pump a set, as we would say in the islands, a little bit? Amen Santos is the guy that gave me the job in Only the Strong, right? Okay, so I couldn't resist. So there was maybe not a national boom, but definitely a cultural boom for capoeira in places where Latino or Hispanic culture was somewhat of a fixture. So definitely out in LA with Amen, definitely in South Florida with I can't remember the guy's names. So but it's possible that that UFC, because UFC came along and probably put a halt to a lot of stuff that might have happened in a lot of places. Very, very possible. Right? Okay. Bob says the only certificate that Ted Wong had that I physically saw was the JKD one. Okay, cool. All right. Pete says trapping the cool SHIT train hidden first. Why didn't that show up? Oh, because you hit a new line, Pete. So the train hidden first didn't come up. Right. Ricard says cool. George Johnston says, I'm JKD hybrid. Let me scroll a little bit and see if George said anything else about what he means about that. Yeah, okay, so there it is, hybrid. So, okay, hybrid. Oh, George, geez, man, I haven't seen you in a long, long time. My gosh, where the heck you been? Right? JKD hybrid. Yeah, man, I forgot your name, George. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Right? And no one liked it. JKD hybrid. Okay, so George, I'm going to tell you something. This is my take on use of the word hybrid in association with Jeet Kune. This is my understanding of it. Feel free, everyone, to disagree with me. A hybrid vehicle is a vehicle which works off two dissimilar elements, not similar elements. That's what a hybrid vehicle is. So if you're talking about dissimilarities, that does not apply or pertain to Jeet Kune, because Jeet Kune is not about training dissimilarly. Is that a word? Right? Jeet Kune is about finding the commonalities in things, right? And let's use the word, blending them together into a seamless entity. So hybrid is inaccurate. That's just my opinion about that, George. I have no idea why people didn't like it. But good to hear from you, my friend. All right, Alex says, if you make money in JKD, you're either first or second generation, wrote a book, or have been teaching for over a decade. Yes, I would say true, right? If not, you are diluting it to make rent. or you just haven't hit upon the correct um, formula for teaching JKD successfully, right? Mark Black says Martial Arts Illustrated. So for those of you who might not be aware, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, Martial Arts Illustrated was kind of like the equivalent in the UK of Black Belt and Inside Kung Fu. They sold more copies if Bruce Lee was on the front, right? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Right? Alex says if you do it right, there's zero in it until after like that decade. I don't know, man. I don't know if I agree with you, Alex. I don't know because I'll tell you this, right? You know when it is that I started to make more money in Jeet Kune? When I started accepting credit cards. We didn't change curriculum or anything, right? We just did that. Instead of check or cash only, we started accepting credit cards. In fact, right, I'm going to tell you something I never told anybody. There was a time where there was a little bit of financial struggle, and I kept getting these envelopes from American Express, and I was so scared to open them because I thought they were what do you call it, like credit card notices or whatever. So after about a week, right, I was like, you know what, Dwight, stop being scared. And I opened up. There were actually check remittances. There were credit card remittances in check form that American Express was sending me. Right? Okay. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that you cannot make money right from the start. We're here in Denver, Mile High Karate, Stephen Oliver's thing. Stephen Oliver um, moved west from the Maryland, DC area. If I have my history right, he was a Junri student, and he was part of the expansion westward of Taekwondo, and he landed here in Colorado, and I think within I don't have the numbers right, but so let me just say it. Within a relatively short period of time, he had opened up a number of schools. So it could be that within I don't want to misquote it, but I want to drive home the point that within a relatively short period of time, not 10 years, way shorter than 10 years, he had opened up more than one branch of Mile High Karate. Okay. So it can be done. Bruce Lee learned a little bit, I would think, about promotion and business and what have you from Junri, and Junri learned a little bit about business of TV from Bruce Lee, in my opinion. Right. So I think you just have to construct the proper formula for it, Alex, I would say, if anybody was to ask me. Right. Okay. Uh, Tim Bescherer. I know it's Becker, guys. Why is it so wrong for anyone in the JKD world to make money teaching? If someone is making their living doing that, they're a professional. And what is it? And that is what some folks seem to lack. Professionalism. Yes, yes, yes. Very much so, Tim. I could have written that myself, right? Yeah. If if you don't start your classes on time, if you don't have a fixed schedule for classes, if it's not organized, then why are people going to be attracted to it? You got to do what it takes to attract the people. You can't just go, Jeet Kune Do is the greatest thing. Bruce Lee is one of the greatest martial artists of all time. I'm teaching Jeet Kune Do. And then just lay back and expect people to flood to your door. Doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. Now, you got to understand basics like the marketing triangle. The triangle, Dwight? You mean Kali? You mean Kali exists even in the marketing of martial art? Right? So Dan Kennedy taught a thing. Let me see if I can remember it. Right? The marketing triangle. So media, market, and message. So first thing that you have to have is a market. There's got to be, you have to know if there are people out there interested in interested in your message. So if your message is, I have the greatest tasting hamburgers, you better be sure that there is a starving crowd out there interested in eating hamburgers. We're not talking about vegans or whatever, okay? Right? So now you've got the goods. You got the greatest tasting hamburgers. You got the starving crowd. Now, really, that'll pretty much sell itself. So part of the media that you might use would be word of mouth. So now it's like, okay, tell your friends, get a discount. Then you're making so much money, you take out an ad. In the old days, it would have been a Yellow Pages ad. It would have been an ad in a magazine, in the Valpak. It would have been an ad in the newspaper or whatever. If you were doing really, really well, it would have been a TV ad or what have you. Today, you run ads on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. The basics are all the same, right? Message, media, market. You'll probably start with the message, and then you got to go find, why am I, okay, so these are my percussion practice sticks, right? So I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was I warm up with air drumming for this stuff, right? I am such an idiot. Okay, so anyhow, so yeah, so you'll probably start with a message. So you have to, all of us who teach Jeet Kune Do, we got to know what is the message behind our JKD practice, behind our JKD instruction. If it's just, oh, Jeet Kune Do is awesome. Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee's thing. Bruce Lee was awesome. Come. What the hell is that? That ain't no message that's going to be attractive to anybody. So you got to bloody well work out what your message is, right? Then you got to be sure that there's a market for your message. Because if you live in a town where you want to sell real hamburgers, but it's a hipster town where everybody is vegan and what have you, ain't no market there for you, buddy. Sorry, that ain't gonna work. Okay, so that's the thing. So you got to be somewhat professional about what you're doing. You have to be in this day and age, because there's competition, whether or not you don't want to think. So if you don't want to think realistically about your JKD practice, about your JKD business or whatever, then, suffer. And don't come to me, because I told you what to do. Okay, all right. We got to go to dinner, so I will start looking to wrap this up. Good one, George. Everything works and nothing works. It depends on us. See, that right there. Because what is he talking about? George is talking about taking responsibility. And this is something that Dan Kennedy taught us. Responsibility equals control. If you want to have control over things in your life, take responsibility for them. But now here's the thing. Control also equals responsibility. It's like a yin yang, right? They go hand in hand. So yes, everything works and nothing works. It depends on us. Yes, for definite sure, right? Timmy says, defining it by what it is not sounds elitist as hell. No, not elitist, Tim. Sounds cool, right? You definitely were not, didn't grow up in the 60s, right? I wonder why it turns newcomers off. No, but you're right. You're right. But not elitist, just cool. How dare you, right? Possibly had them around, give people what they want. All right, Pete Hetrick says, I use that phrase all the time. And the classic Rick Ferry response, that wouldn't work in reality. Whose reality? Pete, you obviously typed that on your phone. Who is reality, or the reality belonging to whom? Come on, man. It's called the English language. Right? Why do we care this much about those 30 to 60-year-old certificates? Not like you can go back in time and erase the fact that these folks all teach. Give it a rest. Tim, I think you're channeling me, right? Yes, people, give it a rest. Okay, Bob Landers wants to know, how does one become a JKD Titan? Well, here's what you do. You spend, let's see, so Chris Kent has been in JKD for 50 years. Cass Magda has been in JKD for 45 years. I'm assuming, Bob, that you're talking about Chris and Cass and Titans of JKD 4, which, as you guys can see, will be held again in Miami, February 1st and 2nd of 2025. More details to follow. Put that on your calendar right now. I assume, Bob, that you're talking about this. So how does one become a Jeet Kune Titan? You get good at it. You spend a long time cultivating knowledge, skill, ability to teach, ability to talk about it, all those things. That's how one becomes a Titan. How do you become a Titan of business? How did Jeff Bezos become a Titan of business? How did Steve Jobs become a Titan of business? How did Ron Goldstein become a Titan in the finance industry? Dave Tepper, all these people. You know what the heck you're doing. You know what the heck you're talking about. And you do not spend time making pithy arguments about other people. How you like me now? Does the list teach concept, or does the concept allow us to create lists for teaching? Does the list, Pete, I'm not sure. Does the list, what list? Because the only list I remember, Pete, is people, the list that the guy showed of Inasano students. Is that what you're talking about? Does the list teach concept, or does the concept allow us to create lists? Oh, man. All right, so I'm going to answer this in the blind, Pete. If you're talking about that list that the guy put out, then I'm going to say that everybody there, because it was an Inasano student, would be classified or categorized as a concepts person. I'm answering in the blind, Pete. Sorry if I'm not doing a good job. Or does the concept allow us to create lists? So, yeah, because if we're looking to understand the concept or the guiding principle behind something, right? Then I can create a list. So if I'm looking at the concept of entry, follow up, and finish, and I marry that, I blend that with kicking and punching, I could be there forever, which is why Taekwondo, which only kicks and punches, has been so successful. You can be there forever. Entry, follow up, finish, just kicking and punching. I could have another list. Entry, follow up, midpoint. And for those of you who didn't train with Paul Vunak, midpoint is when entry, midpoint, right? Follow up. Midpoint is when the entry was not successful. You know what can erase the midpoint? Trapping. So now it's not just kicking and punching. Now we have trapping in there. So I can trap to remove the barrier, and I can go back to the kicking and punching. That's another list. Then trapping, because we have bridge contact. Now I can grab a limb and I can grapple. That's another list. So because I approached it not from technique, so it wasn't, well, Bruce Lee taught me these techniques, right? Bruce Lee didn't teach me how to find my own technique. He taught me these techniques, and these are the techniques that I pass on. You will run out of techniques fairly shortly, I am pretty sure, right? So, but if I approach the concept of it, and I just illustrated just one thing, I can have lists forever till I'm blue in the face. However, I got to make sure that my lists follow the directive of being simple, direct, non-classical, and efficient. I don't just make up lists because whatever, right? And I'm going to take something from over here that has nothing whatsoever to do with this other thing that's right here. That ain't it. It's not, so creative that you're and open-minded that your brains fall out. No, you got to have some kind of guiding principle. Okay. All right. Pete, I have no idea if I answer, if that is what you were talking about. Right. You really need to sync the YouTube with the FB comments, because now you start to lose the sense of them doing. I would need to have an assistant, I believe, Alex, or something, right? Bob Landers, did Dan Inosanto create Kali? That term is used primarily by him, whereas the majority of FMA people use the terms Eskrima or Arnis. So guess what, Bob Landers? I don't care. The majority of FMA people could use whatever the heck it is that they want. They perhaps owe their popularity in FMA to one guy, Dan Inosanto. Okay? Now, Flora Villabril said to Ben Largusa, if I have my facts right, if Guy Chase ever hears this, he can probably correct me. Flora Villabril said to Ben Largusa, I want you to use Kali. And Ben Largusa may have said to Dan Inosanto, we will use the word Kali. And that's how it came about. So no, Dan Inosanto did not create Kali. Okay? So the majority of FMA people, I don't care about the majority of FMA. I do care about them, Bob. I have trained with some of them. But if we do the check-in, right? If we do the check-in, we just might find that majority of FMA people owe a lot of their popularity or getting on the map because of Dan Inosanto's efforts, right? So directly or indirectly. And same thing with a lot of JKD people, right? Indirectly or directly because of Dan Inosanto's efforts in promoting Bruce Lee's art and philosophy. That's how a lot of other people were able to come along and begin like their own seminar careers and what have you. Yeah, so majority, Herb T, what training advice would you give to Asian martial artists on how I have no idea, Herb. I have not aged in 40 years, right? Man, okay, here's the thing. Do the research on what are the best methods for regenerating, right? And so, if you have lost I mean, and we all do, right? There's no way that I have the stamina that I had in 1985 when I met Ajahn Chai and started doing Muay Thai. If I tried to, I limit myself now to when I demonstrate Muay Thai. Now, I always did this. So I never stopped doing this. When I'm teaching the Muay Thai class, if I have to demonstrate, I do whatever it is that we're doing, fast pace, 3 times. I always did that. And I maintain that now. But here's the thing. I get more out of breath with those 3 times than I did as recently as 2014. Okay. But I still do it. So, I can't give medical advice and what have you. My thing is do everything that you were doing in your 20s at the level, at the highest level that you're able to do it now. But let me modify that. I stopped running. I was the Forrest Gump of Barbados. I used to run 3 times a day, 5 a.m., 2 p.m., 11 p.m. That was me. I was 126 pounds, but I could outlast anybody. I stopped running probably 15 years ago or so, right? I tried to get back to it, didn't work. I have recently come upon some stuff about sprinting that I'm going to look into, and we'll see. So if you slacked off and now you have to pick it up, then my basic suggestion would be do some research on how to start slowly getting back into shape. If you've never stopped and it's just that you're older, I say try to do everything that you were doing in your 20s to the best of whatever age you are now, to the best of that ability. Okay? So I don't run, but I still do things to boost the heart rate, right? And to work within the thresholds and what have you. I have a birthday coming up in a few weeks, and there's a tradition. My good friend from Doral, there's a thing called birthday burpees, all right? And you do your age in burpees. So in a couple of weeks, if I disappear, you guys will know it's the birthday burpees that killed me. Okay? That's because of how many I'm going to have to do. Anyhow, you don't have to, you can do them in sets, right? Okay. Alex says, credit cards, that's the most American answer ever. Yes, Alex, it is. What can I say? I'm an American, right? I'm not saying you can't make money. I'm saying it is hard. Well, that's what I'm saying also. Of course it's hard. It's hard to make money. Making money is not the easiest thing in the world. There are people who make it look easy, but I don't know of anybody who made it look easy from day one. And if there's anybody who made money right off the bat, right out of the gate, it's probably after a lot of preparation, which is probably what you were talking about, peanuts and what have you, right? So it is hard. Yes, it is hard. I'm not saying it's about promotion. It's about class sizes, quality, individual attention, and so on. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying that it isn't about those things, right? Because promotion can lead to greater class sizes. And when you have so many people in your school that you got to now be creative with classes and what have you, guess what? That's a good problem to have, right? So you maneuver so that with the classes, you can have that. So now here's where I will differ from what you wrote there, Alex. It's not individual attention. It's individualized attention. Because if I have 20 people in the class, I might not be able to give each person individual attention. But I can be sure to individualize it, right? So here's what I mean. I don't get to everybody in every class, but I know when they're going to be back in class because I know these people train this day and this day and this day. So I make sure that I get to everybody within that week, within those 3 classes. But I can't get to everybody in every class. But I'll make sure I get to everybody every week. So it's not individual, it's individualized. That might not, I mean, the wording might not necessarily mean what I said. But that's what I'm saying. So it is hard work. It is hard work. I am not saying it's not hard work, but this idea that, again, you cannot have high quality and make money is incorrect. It is incorrect. You have to work harder than people who are not interested in making money. And you have to work harder than people who have something which is easier to sell. So making money in Jeet Kune is not for the faint-hearted. And that is a reality. Where did you get the t-shirt? Where the heck did you think I got the t-shirt, Mark? Right? I actually realized I only had Bob Marley shirts. I did not bring a podcast t-shirt. So this is actually what I have to wear tomorrow. So I can't sweat it up right now with you bums, right? Okay. Tim. Flora Villabril and John Lacoste both use the name Kali. It's also a term used by Dos Paris in the 1950s and is in print from that time period. Okay, that's it. Enough said. Herb T. All right, thank you. And that's it. That's all I got. So guess what, guys? That's all I have for you. It is 8:07, not 8:07. It's 6:07. We got a 8:30 dinner. So this will give me enough time to take a cold shower, and I will not risk taking a nap because I will just fall right asleep. So I hope that was worthwhile for you guys. And yeah. Okay. All right. So all of you who want me to say hello to Dan and Asano on your behalf tomorrow, I will. Okay. We'll have a good time. Saturday and Sunday, head back to Miami, and everything will resume as normal can be when you're dealing with me. All right, so guys, have a great weekend, and we will talk soon. This is Dwight Woods of Jeet Kune Rebel signing off. Oh wait, I wonder if I can do my stuff without notes. Let's see. Okay, all right. At paypal.me/UnifiedMA Miami. PayPal.me/UnifiedMA Miami. The Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1 raw but edited version is available. PayPal.me/UnifiedMA Miami. You can also support the show over at JKDRebel.com. Click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The clothing pieces and the kitchen implement pieces. That's JKDRebel.com. click on the Rebel Gear link. You can also support the show by becoming a paid subscriber over on the YouTube. Just click the join button there, and you will see the different levels of membership that we have. That is solely over on the Jeet Kune Dialogues channel. Where is that? There you go. That's too small. Nobody can see that, Dwight. Right? Okay. And that is it. Right? So you guys take care, and we will talk soon. All righty then.